Early specialisation versus early diversification. Although more children are playing sports, it appears the multi-sport athlete is becoming a thing of the past, according to Johnson of 2008. This raises the question, is early sport specialisation or sport diversification the best way to develop youth athletes? Early sport specialisation can be defined as intense year-round training in a specific sport with the exclusion of other sports at a young age, according to Ferguson and Stern of 2014. On the other hand, sports diversification is the participation in a variety of sports and activities through which an athlete develops multilateral physical, social, and psychological skills, according to Worstma of 2000. Most experts are able to state that some form of early specialization is needed in order to make it to an elite level of some sort, but the chances of already reaching such a status are under 1%, so is it worth it? In this video, we will be weighing up the pros and cons of early specialization based on Caruso's study and looking at the effects that both methods have on injuries, motor development, skill acquisition, and social and psychological aspects. Based off Caruso's work, he found that the level of competitiveness in youth sports is on the rise, causing more competitive events at younger ages, specific training, and sport specification, as proven through De Fiori et al. From 2014. Seasons are longer, and parents are encouraged to sign their children up for organized club sports that practice and compete year-round. In the US, youth participating in sports has increased from approximately 18 million in 1987 to 60 million in 2008, according to stats provided by Ferguson Stern of 2014. Equally, as the money in college and professional sports has increased, the desire to train children to become star athletes has increased as well. It has been said that there are 5 parameters to consider with early sport specialization: early start age in one sport, early involvement in one sport while not participating in many sports, early involvement in focused practice, high intensity training, and early involvement in competitive sport. There is a theory that states the earlier an individual starts with the purposeful practice of a skill, the earlier one becomes an expert at that skill. This relates closely to the 10-year rule, which is a general criteria for teaching chess that proposes that 10 years is a sufficient period of time to amass the level of knowledge to be considered an expert, according to the work of Baker and Cobley of 2009. By using this theory, it can be concluded that in order for an athlete to be the best at a particular skill or sport, they need to start early with skill development and practice very specific activities to improve their strengths and reduce their weaknesses. This can be related to those sports that require repetitive motion, such as golf, tennis, and swimming, as they tend to rely on employing deliberate practice for expertise development. Now, let's explore considerations and concerns for specialization. In order to ensure a child is ready for structured practice, certain developmental components should be considered, such as a sport-related fundamental motor skill development, sport-specific knowledge, motivation, and socialization. Fundamental motor skill development should be trained to achieve success in the sport setting, involving skills such as running, jumping, kicking, and throwing. If a child has an immature level of fundamental skill development, they may attempt to play organized sports, but the experience may not be as positive as if they were developmentally ready to learn the sport-specific skills. Factors like motivation and interest, growth and injury risk, and burnout do come into question when also discussing this topic. In terms of interest, if an individual possesses knowledge of a specific sport, it can increase their ability to learn the sport-related skills required to play the sport as well. The more they know, the more they will remember important points when required to perform their motor skills. Ultimately, if there is no motivation to learn, then the learning is not likely to occur. In terms of growth and risk of injury, children themselves are still growing, i.e. changes in height, body weight, muscle mass provide stress to joints and connective tissue. This refers more specifically to growth cartilage and how vulnerable it is to repeated microtraumas. For example, injuries common in youth baseball players are Little League elbow and Little League shoulder. In terms of burning out, early specialization methods has proven to be mentally difficult for outgrowing athletes, just as much as it is physically demanding. Kutz and Seacrest from 2009 defined it as physical and emotional exhaustion from the psychological and physiological demands of the athlete's sport. Burnout can become so severe that it can cause withdrawal or dropout from the activities that were previously enjoyable to the athlete. It's also been known that through the burnout process, performance can decrease due to increase in injury, which have ultimately led to depression in the athlete and then resulting in withdrawal from the sport and team activities. On the other hand, sport diversification characterizes those individuals who play as many sports as often as possible. It exposes them to a multitude of sports with a focus on playing instead of practicing. The science behind this method is that physical and cognitive abilities may develop quicker via playing multiple sports instead of just one, because of a potential crossover effect from playing multiple sports. For example, instead of only developing hand-eye coordination in baseball, a child playing baseball and football can develop foot-eye coordination, footwork, and running mechanics. Also, the ability of a player to read the game or understand player movement and pattern configurations with proper visual cues will likely have a higher rate of crossover if the athlete is participating in sports with similar pattern configurations. More simply, a basketball player will understand the term marking when playing defense if they are also used to play football and use the same term, so they are then able to adapt both skills to meet the criteria of the relevant sport. So what can we conclude from all this information? Caruso was able to finalize that early involvement in sports provides opportunities to develop gross motor skills that include jumping, throwing, hopping, balancing, and running. Furthermore, adolescent bodies are not prepared to be treated like an adult's body. Diversification in sports at an early age has the potential to provide stimuli so that a child's body can adapt and develop multiple motor skills that may cross over between sports. However, only once the mental, physical, and social aspects of a child are fully developed can specialization be considered. Parents and coaches have to keep this in mind when choosing the level of competition that is appropriate for the athlete. If the level of competition is not appropriate for one or all of these aspects, the child may have a negative experience. Perhaps the most beneficial method is to allow the children to choose the sports they are passionate about, and this way they are less likely to experience burnout or overuse injuries while setting themselves up for a better chance of becoming a well-rounded elite athlete.